This little paper cottage is almost finished. Today I'm finally adding the roof and the front door, and then decorating the outside with paper plants, ivy, and a few cozy touches, like a chair, some books, and maybe even a cup of tea. As always, everything is handmade by me using upcycled paper and scrap cardstock. Just simple materials and a bit of imagination. If you've been following the build so far, thank you for sticking with it. And if you're new here, welcome. You're just in time for the final chapter of this tiny paper home. I'm starting off with the roof. I came up with a design I really liked for the rafters. I cut them from foam board and glued a layer of cardstock over them to give them extra strength. I just love this little bit of detail I painted across the front of the rafters. It adds so much character. Now I'm gluing the rafters into place. Next up is the roof itself, which is also cut from foam board. I added strips of cardstock on the underside so it looks like wooden slats from the inside of the cottage. Just a little touch, but it makes a big difference. Once the roof is glued on, I can move on to the shingles. I want to keep them really simple, so I'm using strips of cardboard and gluing them across each roof section, rather than doing them one by one. For me, that works so much better. It's quicker and still gives a layered look. Then I finish everything off with a bit of paint. I love this part. It really starts to feel like a home once the roof is on. The cottage door is made from several layers of cardstock, which really helps add depth and detail. I painted it to match the rest of the wood trim, so it ties everything in nicely. Even the doorknob is handmade from cardstock and a little bit of air-dry clay. I am so happy with how the door turned out. The door's been missing for so long, it's kind of amazing how different the whole cottage feels now that it's finally in place. I made the vine by using some twine. I pulled it apart to get thinner strands, then I stiffened it with glue and gave it a coat of dark brown paint to look like an old woody vine. I looked at lots of ivy photos to get an idea of how it naturally grows, and now I'm gluing it onto the cottage in spots where I think it might naturally creep along the walls. Using a real leaf as inspiration, I made these tiny ivy leaves in a few different sizes using painted packing paper. I was inspired by a video from Feffy's Cottage. She shared so many great tips, and I learned a lot about ivy and leaves from her. I did change it up some to make it my own, but her video really helped me get started. I'll link it in the description, so definitely check her out. Gluing the leaves would have been overwhelming to do all in one sitting, so I spaced it out over a few sessions. It was totally worth it. I couldn't be more pleased with how it turned out. And again, a big thank you to Feffy's Cottage. I wanted to add some flower beds, but I didn't want them to look flat, so I'm gluing some wrinkled, bunched up paper near the foundation to give them a bit of shape. To smooth everything out, I'm covering the paper with a single layer of toilet paper. Then I glue on some dried used tea to create a nice soil texture. For the grass, I cut up bits of rope and painted it green. It's a simple trick, but it works really well for me. The outside of the cottage is going to need a lot of plants, so I'm bringing out my bin of plant making supplies. I didn't really want to spend a ton of time making all the new plants, so I'm hoping I can use some of these. Most of them were made from paper during a phase when I was experimenting a lot with plant techniques. There are paper, flowers, and leaves, and even a few completely finished plants in here, so they should come in handy. This part was so much fun. It really felt like I'd just come back from the nursery with a fresh tray of plants and was out in the garden planning everything out. I was just poking little holes in the soil, deciding where things might grow best, just like I used to do. Living in an apartment now, I really miss working in flower beds or potting and repotting plants. So this felt like a tiny version of that, a quiet little gardening moment in miniature. I did have to be careful not to get too carried away gluing in all the plants, though. It's easy to overdo it, and I didn't want things to end up looking too busy or crowded. The porch is only big enough for one chair, so I imagined it as a place where someone could really unwind and take their time. I imagine the person who lives in this cottage loves reading and gardening, so of course they'd need a big comfy chair, a place to relax and enjoy a good book and a cup of tea. This chair doesn't actually exist in real life. It was inspired by a watercolor painting I saw, and I just knew it belonged here. It might be my favorite piece of furniture I've ever made. I especially love how the little hand-painted pillow looks with it. It adds just the right softness. It feels so right setting it here on the porch, like it's been waiting for this spot all along. Here's a few more little touches I've added. A metal tub filled with potting soil, a well-used watering can that I made from paper, and a garden hose crafted from coated wire with some paper quill details. And of course, a relaxing cup of tea, perfect for setting on the arm of the chair while reading or just sitting quietly and enjoying the moment. It's kind of hard to believe I started this cottage almost a year ago. Back then, I didn't really have a big plan for it, just a few ideas here and there. I do have a funny confession, though. I actually started this whole project because I wanted a structure covered in ivy after being inspired by Pfeffy's cottage. Somewhere along the way, I got caught up in all of the details, and now here it is. Finally, with all that ivy. That's why there is so much of it, too. I also love that I got to use some plants that I made years ago, things I held on to, not even knowing what they were for until now. Let's take a quick look inside, since I know you'll want to see how cozy it feels now with the roof on and the new hanging light above the table. Just a heads up, though, we'll have to pretend the hot cocoa is tea now. I had the holidays and winter on my mind when I set the table last December. I still plan to add more personal touches over time, like pictures and a few things to make it feel more lived in. I just love looking at all the tiny little details up close. The ivy creeping up the wall and the flower beds and potted plants are tucked here and there. It really makes it feel like you're walking through this miniature world in real life. Even though it's made entirely out of cardboard and paper, there's just something about it. It feels like someone actually lives here. Like maybe they just finished watering the garden and popped inside to make a cup of tea. It actually reminds me of being a little girl sitting on the porch with my grandparents as the sun went down, the soft glow of the porch light, everything quiet and still, except you can hear the crickets chirping not far away. I hope this tiny cottage brought you a little bit of calm or even inspiration today, something to slow things down, even just for a few minutes. And I know it's small, but honestly, there is a little bit of magic in all small things, isn't there? Thank you for following along with this project, especially since it took me almost a year to finish. Also, I really enjoyed trying something a little different with this video. It's not my usual step-by-step tutorial. It's more of a story. I'd love to know what you think about this style. And don't worry, I will still do tutorials. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.